As we learned in the diabetes module, diabetes significantly increases the risk of cardiovascular disease, kidney disease, increases risk of amputation. There are a lot of negative health effects of diabetes, and there's one population in Canada that's been disproportionately affected by a diabetes, and that is our Indigenous population. And a good question is, why is that? There might be genetic factors at play, but a lot of the research that has gone into it has pointed to colonization as one of the reasons for an increase in diabetes in this population. From oral history, what's clear is that Indigenous individuals in the past didn't really suffer from chronic diseases. Diabetes wasn't really a thing, cardiovascular disease wasn't really a thing. So, like, they existed, but they weren't very common in these populations. So what's up now? Why now? Why are Indigenous individuals so disproportionately affected by it? And these things never have one cause, but one of the beliefs is that colonization that led to a loss of culture has contributed to the high incidence of diabetes within this population. And what's really interesting is that some Canadian scientists actually interviewed both Blackfoot and Cree elders, as well as studied diabetes rates and a bunch of lifestyle and cultural variables within certain Indigenous populations. And what they found, and this is fascinating to me, is that Indigenous individuals who retained their culture through language were significantly less likely to develop diabetes. Like, think about that. All we're saying is that people that were able to keep their culture through language had a lower risk of diabetes. Now, we have to be careful because association doesn't equal causation, but it points to the fact that something happened in colonization and the loss of that culture that it led to that might have increased the risk for diabetes within these populations. And that's why there's such a push in many Indigenous cultures to bring back these cultural practices that were so important to their being. And so I love this one quote from the study I just talked about, which says, from one of the elders, which says, "Everybody has been gifted with the how, knowledge, to deal with themselves, and we have to realize that. We have to get back to that. Every nation in this country, in this world, has been gifted with that ability. Even the animals know how to heal themselves. Indian people were like that. They healed themselves, but times have changed." And how have times changed? Well, now we find that on many Indigenous reserves, especially Indigenous people that live on reserves, they are more likely to have poor access to food. The foods that are available are often highly processed and nutrient poor. And we believe this is part of how this colonized way of life has actually stopped some of these cultural practices and taken away some of the knowing of how to take care of ourselves. And like I said, now there's a big push to go back to that, to learn traditional knowledge and traditional ways of life so we can get back to our body's, knowledge of how to take care of itself, of how to eat well and how to, take care of our body in general.